Good morning and welcome to another Kenny Cars and Coffee, where if you're a car guy and want to know more about performance in your car, you're in the right place. I'm Kenny Brown, and over the next half hour, I always say half hour, it never get done in half hour, so I'm going to say over the next hour, I'm going to try to share with you some of my extensive knowledge and experience from 40 years of building high-performance cars and race cars. And we've got a lot to go over today. Like it's funny, every Wednesday, Harry asks me what I'm going to talk about, and I said, I don't know. Tell me what people want to know about. So we get the questions from the Speed Therapy Society, and that's kind of how I shape my talks, is what you guys want to hear about. And also I'll pick out something that's kind of interesting I think you might be interested in. This week, I need to finish up on the spring theory. I gave you guys a pop quiz, but didn't give you the answer. So I'll do that today. Let's see, I thought something you might be interested in is bump steer. I was actually getting ready to ship out a bump steer kit, and I thought, you guys might be interested in the bump steer, so we're going to talk about that a little bit today. Shout out to Ernie. He invited a whole bunch of people from the Boss Facebook groups, and if you know anybody that might be could get some real value out of this, some of your friends, go ahead and invite them. I mean, the more the merrier, because as you guys have seen, the Speed Therapy Society is getting bigger and it's getting better, and there's lots of cars, lots of activity, and it's really cool. Let's see, and that's National Mustang Day. National Mustang Day was Friday, and it was 56 years of the Mustang, and we had a lot of people post stuff up, which is great. And of those 56 years of Mustang, let's see, I've spent 34 years of the Mustang with the Mustang. So I mean, not really the whole range, but I've spent a lot of time with Mustangs. Let us know who's out there, and remember, do the whole thumbs up thing if you like what I'm saying. And let's see, Speed Therapy. Carrie has to make notes because I can't remember all this. I got too much to say. So Speed Therapy side we talked about. That's where we're going to do the 5-day, and we keep postponing the 5-day workshop. It's partly because of the current situation. We're a bare minimum staff, and there's a lot to do to prepare for that, and we just kind of unfortunately have to keep pushing it back a little bit, but it's still on the agenda. I'm still going to do it. So get into the Speed Therapy Society if you want to take part of that 5-day, actually 5-evening workshop, about an hour an evening, on transforming your driving experience. And let's see, we have some, this is pretty interesting. We've got some serialized Kenny Brown cars that have joined the group. For those that you don't know, we sell a lot of parts, but my first thing is I'm a car builder. I'm a car builder at heart, and that's what I've been doing for 4 decades. And ever since my career started with building the Celine racing Mustangs, I'm a car builder. Which, just a little side note, if anybody's ever looked at our website, what you don't see is a whole bunch of parts from a gazillion different people. Anything that's on our website is parts that I use in the cars I build, or parts that I approve for the cars I build and you build. So that's why there's not a whole bunch of things. The only thing that's on there is just what I use. And so what's on the website is what I use to build my cars, and you follow along and you can build your cars too that way. We need to talk about, the spring. Last week I gave you guys this pop quiz about the numbers that are on a coilover spring, and this one was 0800.250.0350. You can probably see that was backwards. And to refresh what these numbers mean is the first number is the length. So 0800 means is an 8-inch spring. The second number, 250, is the ID, inside diameter of the spring. And the third, the 0350, is the rate. So it's 350-pound spring. That's an 8-inch, 2.5 50-pound spring. And the IDs are kind of how springs are talked about. And just as a kind of like note, on our Strange and most U.S. shocks use about a 2.5-inch ID. Now our JRZs, which come from the Netherlands, use a 2.25 ID. So on here to be 800.250 225, which means it's 2¼ inch. And you can see, it doesn't sound like much, but you can see that it looks like a really big difference in the outside diameter. But that extra, by using the 2¼ inch springs, we can actually gain a little more space around it. And the only other spring size is, for a lot of the Europeans, they use like a 60 millimeter. So the internal bore will be 60 millimeters on some of those European ones. So that's the answer to last week's pop quiz. Coney adjustment. I want to talk about Coney adjustment because I had a 15-minute consult this week on Brian about his Coney shocks and adjusting his Coney shocks and traction brackets. And that's kind of a good thing for a lot of the street performance people that don't have the wherewithal to do the coilover package. You might still be running like Coneys, which are a great shock. And any of the European shocks I use, Coney, Bilstein, their valving strategy is what I prefer over to the Japanese strategy, which is you get to increase the firmness, you get harshness. In the European, increase the firmness, you get firm but not harsh. So what I was telling him is that it made me think on the Coney adjuster knob. I always keep one on the top of my box. Back a long time ago when we were using Coneys because there wasn't much else out there. And we actually, at one point, started making our own coilovers with Coneys and Bilsteins. But in adjusting like a street shock and a Coney, it's just completely different than we would for like the Strange or the GRZs, which are kind of more street performance / track. And I tell people that with any of the shocks and even the Coneys, what you want to do is you want to adjust the shock as soft as possible for maximum compliance. And what do I mean by that? Well, you want the tire, you want the control so the tire kind of follows the road. If it's too soft, it's going to bounce. If it's too stiff, it's going to kind of skip across. So the whole idea is you want the shock as soft as possible for control and compliance. So the easy way to do it for like a Coney is you find a road that's you can get up to pretty good speed and it's got like a great big dip in it. And you go flying through that dip, and if the car wants to take more than one set, you need to add a little shock. If it really doesn't take a good set, maybe you got too much. But the whole idea is just go through, and it takes 2 sets, a little bit, add a little more towards firm, and just until that second dip goes away. And that's how you adjust the fronts. In the back, it's a little different. Again, you start everything from full soft. So you start from full soft, and maybe you go up like a quarter turn. But with the Coneys, you have to actually take them off, compress them, and adjust them. If you've got too much rear shock, the car's going to porpoise. It's going to kind of do this down the road. So if you need traction, like off a corner, if you're missing a little traction, add a little more rebound. That holds the back of the car down longer and puts more weight on the tires to give you more bite. So that's a little side note on adjusting Coneys for the street. Also along those lines, because we've had some people with street cars and asking about Coneys, I'm looking at maybe some options on springs that you could use that aren't going to be what to the upper end of what we use. That's going to be better than what you can find off the shelf in most places. So I might have some information on that next week. I'm doing a little research, get information on that. And then Brian also asked about traction brackets and if it helps corner exit speed under throttle. Absolutely. Here's our traction brackets for the SN95 and Fox, and it's a pretty simple piece. In fact, the hardware is almost more expensive than the piece because we include all the hardware and we only use grade 8 hardware. In the weeks coming, I'll talk a little about hardware in grade 8, grade 5, and in the metric 8.8 and 10.9. So, but what this does, we're adding with the traction brackets, we're lowering the back of the control arm, which is adding anti-squat. And anti-squat means how fast the car wants to compress the spring before it starts putting weight on the tire, which means traction. So with very little anti-squat, I mean, the car is going to come down a lot. You're not getting any weight on the tire. With too much anti-squat, it's going to come down really fast, and you don't want that either. So you want just enough to come down and get good traction. So to answer your question, yeah, traction brackets will help traction off a corner, to help traction anywhere. And we'll get deeper into that in the 5-day. Leads into my next question. Naked Snake R asked, what should be the first mod on a 2013 GT500? Can anybody else out there answer that? Well, if you've been with me for a while, you're going to know there is only answer is rear grip kit. Plain and simple. I just talked about anti-squat for the SN95. My rear grip kit is, it's what it is, it's a solution. It's a solution to the problem that all Mustangs have, but it's even more so than GT500s, where they've got a lot of extra power, tons of torque, is trying to get the traction down. And the other thing, when you got so much power, not enough traction, going around a corner, you get happy foot, you get to the gas too soon, and you know that whole thing does this whippy thing. And oversteer, we talked about oversteer or loose, and that's kind of when the back of the car hits the wall first. My rear grip kit is specifically engineered it's a solution, but it's also a system. Every single piece is engineered to improve rear suspension geometry. And that means extra anti-squat, anti-lift, and a lower rear roll center. All that put together means the back of the car stays completely settled down. Well, not completely, we got a ton of torque. You're going to overpower the tires almost any situation, but it's going to make the back of the car so much more controllable. And there's some guys out there in this group that have put the rear grip kit on and absolutely transforms the back of the car. And it includes our upper control arm module. I say a module because it's not just an upper control arm. The whole thing, I mean, the control arm is longer, and I move the pickup point. The axle brackets, which are similar to the SN95, and then our lower control arms, even those are I use offset bushings to straighten them out and make them parallel to the center line of the car, which helps with the rear roll axis, and then the rear roll center relocation kit, which brings the roll center down from the middle of the axle down to the bottom of the differential. Absolutely transforms the back of the car. In fact, it works so good, we throw the rear sway bar away. I've had people that I've told that to, and they don't believe me, to put the rear sway bar on, and the car gets loose again. Now, if you take this rear sway bar off, it's not going to get loose, because the engineering in the rear geometry offsets anything you need from a sway bar. Some serialized cars. I didn't get those. Some serialized Kenny Brown Mustangs.
Just this week, we have more in the group.
No, just this week. There's more in the group. Just this week, John Marshall, a 92 007S. Alan has a 95 007 320X. Brad, 9600 CAL. That's a Callahan quarter horse. We built a number of those back in '96. And then Adam has a 2003 Marauder. I love those Marauders. Anybody that aren't familiar with the Marauders, we 2003, 2004, we did our own supercharged Marauders, and they were just amazing cars. And it's so cool. I had one guy tell me he had so much fun blowing off Corvettes when he had two baby seats in the back. What else? Oh, Robert Valente has a 2013 GT4 CS, and I actually went out to Nebraska and spent a couple days with Robert coaching him on driving a Mustang on the Mustang line and getting his car set up. And just I really enjoy doing this, because it's amazing to see how from the first time we go out on track to the second day, and how confident the people come just in one day. And it's just a matter of understanding the basic principles, and then of course, we worked on shock adjustment, getting the car set up. It made a huge difference. And David. Oh, David's talking about this is kind of like a side note. David has an 89 LX hatch, and he said it was a perfect track car with all Kenny Brown suspension and brakes. Then he added a supercharger and a 331 engine, and it wasn't the same car. So he's taking the supercharger off and going back the way it was, and that kind of goes back to the weeks prior. We talked about how, for track cars, you keep it simple. For the most part, keep it naturally aspirated. You put a lot of power in, and Mustangs have a hard enough time getting the power to the ground. And you put a lot of power and a lot of torque, and coming off a corner, you got to feather the gas, and you really can't get to the gas till you're partially down the straightaway. Where with like my cars and naturally aspirated, you're on the gas at or around the time you hit the apex, and you're flat on the gas at track out, which means you've got your foot down and your hammer on. Where with you got too much power, you got to kind of feather it back. I can't tell you how many times Road America, which if people are familiar with that, they've got some super long straightaways, and people consider it a power track, you know, for a lot of horsepower. I can't tell you how many GT500s I passed halfway down the straightaway, just because I'm flat off the corner, and they're still trying to get to the gas to get grip. There's video out there I think some of you have seen where I actually get off the corner harder than a Viper, and because I carried so much more speed off the corner, he couldn't catch me down the straightaway. So it's not about power on a track day car, it's about good power. And don't get me wrong, having some decent power. But keep it simple, keep it naturally aspirated, focus on your performance platform, chassis, suspension, wheels, tires, brakes, and you have just a great track car. Here's Dan says, why is the rear, he's talking about a 2013 Boss, why is the rear car slightly higher than the front on the stock car? He said, I read on a blog post that Ford did this for handling, but I'm not sure I believe it. Well, that's smart on your behalf. I have a hard time believing a lot of things that are on you read on the internet, because a lot of people talk about what they know, but they don't know what they don't know. In this case, and I never sat in any of the meetings for the Boss when they were doing the sign off for the suspension, but from all the times I've been in meetings at Ford, where I can tell you my best assumption is, you know, part in sign off, they have to go through a whole number of tests to get the engineering sign off to go to the next phase. They have to do this. They have to get that signed off with maximum weight, which means 4 people in the car, full tank of gas, maximum weight in the trunk. Now, you put all that in, and if the car is sitting a little higher, all of a sudden it's, you know, even or a little bit lower. And if you were to start out with it lower, it's going to come way down. So my best guess is it's all has to do with engineering sign-off and carrying people and stuff. Well, we don't do that. We don't carry a lot of people and stuff. We just carry a lot of speed. So we always have our cars a little bit lower. In fact, I typically run on a live axle car, maybe 1/4 inch to no more than half an inch rake at the back, and that's measured with the driver in the car and half a tank of gas. Here's another one. 50 Mustang. When adding a winged S197 trunk lid, what, if any, reinforcement is needed to prevent deflection? Well, we've got plates that go underneath the trunk lid that kind of fit into, if you look under there, it's kind of like these triangle type shapes that go fit right into there, and the wing bolts through that and it kind of squishes it so it holds it tight. Now, these were designed specifically for the Boss 302S for the G-Stream wing, but the G-Stream wing is no longer in production. If you've got a G-Stream, it's a perfect fit for that. If not, whatever wing you're using, you just have to drill a couple extra holes, and it's going to be fine. So yeah, we've got those plates. If they still make them, we can get them for you. We'd have to check on that. Okay, we did the springs. We did bump steer. We're going to get into bump steer.
Did you do the springs? I have a question on the springs.
Oh, question on springs.
Let's see if I can.
Oh, hi, Tony, Tracy, Calvin. I see your names pop up. I can't always read the names because I'm talking too fast, and the things move too fast. But hello.
Okay, this is from Edward Trankner. I'm sure I'm.
Okay, Edward.
And he's been on here. He has a question about springs.
Question. Okay.
And he's running Bilstein shocks and struts on his car right now. What springs should I use to lower my 2001 Bullet slightly for better stance and traction? I think it's both on street and track.
What's that? Is a
2001 Bullet.
2001 Bullet, so it's an SN95.
Wants to slightly lower it for better stance and traction. What springs should he use?
Okay, that's a really good question. It goes back to what I was talking about earlier. I'm doing some research, and I'll have a good answer for that next week, because I'm working. It's coming up with some spring choices that are better than what you can get off the shelf from anybody, like the front springs. Well, in an SN95, it's different than in SN95. SN95, the springs are on the shocks. It's kind of like a straight rate. But with the SN95, the springs are actually on the control arm. And I'll talk about spring rates on the S197s as being like in the 400 range, but on an SN95 maybe 600 or 700. Well, the difference is there's a ratio that when you move the spring inboard, it takes more spring. It's just kind of like a lever. When the lever's out here, it's easier to push up. When it's down here, it's tougher to push up. So you need more spring as you go inside. There's a ratio that I think that question comes up, so I think we'll include that in the 5-day, talking about the how to difference between on the control arm and on the coilover. But I'll have some answers for you next week, because that kind of occurred to me, kind of weird. It kind of occurred to me this week that somebody might be interested in that. Okay, so we got Dan, we got Brian, we got the new cars. We have serialized cars, thumbs up, National Mustang Day, Speed Therapy Society. If you're not in it, please join. It's getting better and better. Those that are in there, I mean, you can really, they're cool cars, a lot of good conversation. It's like-minded people who enjoy street track, and it's pretty cool. And I've got a note here on street performance, because to go along with that last question, in my cars, the only real difference between street performance and track or race are springs and shocks. Like on an S197, no matter what, the geometry is the same. The geometry is geometry. All it does is make sure that you get the biggest possible footprint on the tire on the ground at all times. That doesn't change for anything. For when you start going up and going faster, we need to go up in spring rates and shock valving. And as we've talked before, springs and shocks sort of have to work together. With the Bilsteins, you got a good shock, so we can actually go up in spring rate pretty good. Stock shocks, I wouldn't go up much in spring rate because you got a mismatch in valving. So yeah, I'll have something on that hopefully next week. I sent some emails off to some people I know to come back with some answers. Get into bump stops. We have more, not bump stop, but bump steer. Okay, let's kind of move on to bump steer. Now, what is bump steer? Okay, bump steer is when you're like going on track or even on the road and you go around a corner and you hit a bump. What happens is, because of the angularity difference between the control arm and the tie rod end, when you hit a bump, that is going to move the tire one way or the other, which you don't want. You kind of want the tire to stay pretty much where it is. That's called bump steer. When you hit a bump, the car wants to steer itself. Now, for S197s, we have a really easy solution. This is standard tie rod end. Okay, you can see that. This is a bump steer tie rod end. As you can see, the shaft is considerably longer. That's because we want to move the spindle end of the tie rod down, so we improve bump steer. And the really correct way to do bump steer is like for race cars and stuff. There's two ways to do it. One is, if you've got a geometry program like I do, you can run it through the computer and come up with the optimum positioning of the rack and the tie rod on the spindle. If you don't have that, then it's a complicated thing. If you have to set the car up with no springs in it, and you have to run through the entire up and down motion and then check the toe at each one of those phases and keep moving things around until you get the right thing. There's some bump steer kits out there that have like a rod end and a bunch of spacers, so you can move the rod end up and down on a stud that comes off the spindle. That takes a lot of work and a lot of time. And also the thing about rod ends is that they, most people use just two-piece rod ends, metal to metal, and they won't take very long before they start rattling and banging. Where Like on the rod ends we use on the back of the car are all super top quality, professional grade, Teflon lined, so they're smooth actuality. In fact, the ones I get are actually even tighter than normal. So you get smooth actuality and they don't rattle. So you can see by just, we've already done kind of like the engineering, and that gets pretty darn close for most people. If you're not, 100% race car, this is going to get you close. Even if you are a racetrack car, it's still going to get you close. Now, the easy way to look, SN95s. SN95 is even easier to change bump steer. Offset rack bushings. You can see, now the regular rack bushings, that hole is right smack dab in the middle. With an offset rack bushing, we actually move the rack up to improve bump steer. And so that's pretty easy. And if, kind of like the simplest way to know if you need bump steer or not is, get your car up in the air and just look at it. Visually take a look at the angle of the control arm and the angle of the tie rod. If they're not in the same angle, then you need to fix your bump steer. If they're fairly parallel, then you've got okay bump steer, which is also kind of like the cheater's way to set bump steer. I mean, if you don't want to go through, if you got one of the adjustable ones with the rod ends, and you don't want to go through all the hassle, just as more parallel you can get those, the better your bump steer is going to be. So that's my kind of tips on bump steer. So I'll get these shipped out this week, so somebody will have better bump steer in their car. So we're actually almost ready for some questions, unless I missed something. I'm good at missing things. Facebook.
Can you talk about the Mark 8s that you used to do? Somebody asked you if you ever did Mark 8s in the 90s.
Lincoln Mark 8s?
Yeah,
Sort of. We did a little bit with the Mark 8. We did more with the T-Birds. We did a number of the IRS T-Birds. In fact, if you look through some of the old magazines, we actually built a short wheelbase T-Bird where we shortened the wheelbase up. I can't remember the numbers now, but quite a bit, because I know that in talking to the guys at Ford Racing, one of the issues they had with the long wheelbase on the T-Birds when they were doing like that Trans Am and stuff is the moment of polarity. The back just wanted to move around too much. So what we did is we actually shortened. I think we took about that much out of the middle of the car, made them look completely different, and boy did they handle. They just unbelievable handle. So we really didn't do any Mark 8s. Maybe we did some shocks and things like that, but really not much to them. But we did quite a few T-Birds where we shortened them. We did suspensions. We improved the supercharging. So T-Bird, yes, not too much away in the Mark 8s. Okay, I'm getting my notes. Just the fight. You guys realize it by now that I wouldn't be able to do this without Perry. The 5-day Transforming Your Driving Experience workshop. What the curriculum is planned right now is day one is we're going to talk about the first critical steps to transforming your driving experience, planning, expectations, things like that. Day two is building the performance platform, handling and suspension geometry, and then building the performance platform part 2 on day 3, which is brakes, wheels, tires, cooling, and safety. And then 4 is dialing in your Mustang to improve your driving experience. And then 5 is going to be what we don't get to in 1 through 4, and also some tips and tricks in driving and car preparation. So, I mean, I'm going to try to squeeze a lot into, I try to squeeze a lot into an hour here. So this is going to be, we say 5-day, but it's actually 5 evenings, about an hour each evening, Monday through Friday. And it will be recorded. So those of you that can't make the live, then it's going to be recorded, so you can look it up. Also, I might remind you that if you're just joining us, there's a number of my Saturday Cars and Coffee that we've already done that are recorded, and you can download them. And just don't do the first 2. Start with 3 forward, because we kind of changed the format to get me more comfortable. The first 2 is just strictly answering questions for the most part, and from 3 forwards when I really start getting into talking about things.
Tell them what you talked about, all the shocks and struts.
Oh, Carrie said, tell me what I talked about.
No less. Okay, never mind. I'll have to look.
I have to look. I mean, it's like I get so wrapped up in this, I get so carried away talking, I kind of forget what I talked about the week before. But we've talked about JRZs, the shocks I have custom built in the Netherlands for me for S197. We talked about the Strange shocks for SN95 that I have custom built for me by Strange. And then we also talked about the kind of an in-between type spring and shock package. You know, I usually don't put customers on 650-pound springs until they're more advanced on track. But we use an H&R kit that actually has a 630 spring, but due to the valving in the shock, I mean, it's pretty comparable for, for street performance and for novice through intermediate. You just turn the shocks down, take some of the shock out, and then as you increase your speed, then you can add shock back in. They work pretty darn good. And then we've got like a street performance package that is all pre-adjusted, that is great for street performance and totally capable for novice and up through intermediate track. It's got like a 400-pound front spring. And we talked before that, the like S197s come with something like a 150-pound front spring. And anything you can buy off the shelf is in the 225 range, 220 range. And my touring spring is a 350, street performance is 400. Intermediate track on street tires is 500, 550. Advanced track on sticky tires is 650. And if that sounds like a lot, for my late son Paul's World Challenge car on Pirelli slicks, which are super sticky, we're in like the 850 up to 1,000. But at that level, I mean, you really have to have some real skills, because the way the cars are set up, they're absolutely on the knife edge, which makes them fast. And unless you've got the experience and the skill set and the muscle memory, so you can just sense what the car is going to do before it does it and react ahead of time, you're going to just have a real problem. You're just not going to be able to drive it fast. Slow, yes, but fast, no. So.
Okay, ready?
I'm ready for questions.
Sure. Okay, this is a comment by Brad.
Comment by Brad.
Yeah. Thanks for the 15-minute consult last weekend, Ken. Great info and a big help to getting the alignment sorted out on the JMS Road Race Mustang. Your entire DNA is in that car, and it's the best car I've driven outside of your personal cars, of course. So
okay, that was from Brad. He was. We did a 15-minute consult, which you've heard me talk about this, and if you have questions that are a little more complex than me just answering in a couple of minutes, you can schedule a 15-minute consult with Carrie. I try to do maybe 3 of these a week, which I can spend more time on your specific issue or things you want to know. You just have to call in to Carrie, and she can check my schedule and get you lined up, or post it in the group. And for Brad, I mean, he's got it's kind of interesting. It's a converted. I think it's a Fox, maybe converted to.
I think it's SN95.
Either SN95 or Fox, can't remember which, but it's converted to an IRS car, and he's got the full. We did the complete IRS package in the back: upper control arms, lower control arms, coilovers, and we did our geometry fix for the IRS carrier, which makes them just drive like they're a dream. So, yeah. So, like I say, if you've got deeper questions, just let us know, and if my schedule permits, I'll try to get with you and answer those questions.
Okay, Victor Jenkins, my main question would be air springs versus coils.
Okay, Victor's question is air springs versus coils. If you've got a street car, air springs, you can put the car up, put the car down, do a lot of other things. I don't use air springs, and the reason is I like to control my spring rate. With an air spring, you put more air in it, and the spring rate goes up. You take air out, the spring rate goes down, so you really can't control a specific spring rate. So for like street cars, they're fine. But if you want to start like getting a higher level of performance, you need a spring rate that you can control, and also have shocks that are matched to it. We've talked about that before, that the valving in the shock has to match the rate of the spring, especially on rebound, because if it's a double adjustable shock, the bump in the shock is compression, and that controls how fast the spring compresses. We talked about all the spring's job is to hold up the car, and the bump controls how fast the spring compresses. The rebound controls how fast the spring uncompresses. So that's why I say that the easy guide is bump. Bump control gets you from turn in to the apex, and rebound gets you apex off, because you don't want on the corner exit, you don't want the spring to expand too quickly, or you're going to lose grip. You don't want it to stay too tight, or you're going to when it should be getting more grip, you're going to be losing grip. And springs and shocks need to work together. And I kind of said before, it's like beer and pizza. They work together really well.
Okay, this is another one on the spring question. Then we're going to go back to a bump steer question.
Okay, spring question.
Okay, Tim Allen suggestion as a current upgrade from the mid-90s Coney red shocks and struts for Performance Street Fox body with front coilover and big brakes. So he's running right now. Spring is 10-inch, 2.5, 300 pound. He wants to convert it to something that you'd use for today. To build this car today, what brand type might be an improvement, if at all? Hope that's enough information.
Oh, is that a Fox? You said Fox or SN95?
Fox.
Fox. Mm-hmm. Okay. The answer is yes. Now back and going way back, we used to use a lot of Coneys and Bilsteins, and then we had custom springs done, sort of the spring rates that were better but not great. At least I know they're not great now. Back then I thought they were great. But then what we did, we actually, Strange had a kit, we can convert those to coilovers. Then we started using coilovers. Now what we do is we actually have, for Fox and SN95, I have Strange custom build me coilover shocks front and rear with the valving I'm looking for, so it'll take the spring rate. Now, the thing that, if you're familiar with Strange engineering, they're like 99% drag racing. And so what we did is I went to Dimitri with my book of, I got a whole book of shock data in shock dynos, and I said, can you build a shock that, the dyno curves kind of look like this? And he said, sure. So they're building custom coilover struts in the front. The fronts I can only get in double adjustable, but we can get single or double adjustable rears. And the custom built for the IRS cars, and for the regular cars, we don't have to go to super extreme valving because we're not going to run that high spring on the car. So yeah, there's some better options now. Now in a Fox, you'd have to use a SN95 spindle, just because of how the strut bolts of the spindle. There's a gap. I can't remember. One's narrower, one's wider. I think the older ones are wider, the newer ones are narrower. So you'd have to change your spindle, but a lot of people do that anyway just to get the 5 lugs. So the answer is yes.
Okay, this is another one sort of related to that. Christopher Sauter, what needs to be done in order to run the front grip kit on a S197, spring shocks, etc.? What needs to be done in order to add that?
The front grip kit, what needs to be done? The front grip kit is pretty simple. It consists of a K-member, controller module, a bump steer, and then with the springs and shocks, the caster camber plates. The basics is just putting the bump, the front grip kit on. It would be best if you went up on springs and shocks, because then you're going to get full advantage. I put a lot of geometry into the front that that other people don't. There's anti-dive, which means that when you brake, the front of the car doesn't want to dive so much. It comes down flatter. You get better braking. It's got add caster gain. Caster helps in turning, getting a negative camber, positive camber in turning. So we put more caster into it. We bring the roll center up, which we've talked about before, with longer shaft ball joints. So the front roll center, the rear roll center are closer. And from that point, the geometry is done in there, and then it's just springs and shocks. Whatever springs and shocks you decide, If you need some input other than what we're using, the JRZs are kind of a primary, but then we also have the H&R packages. So just give me a call and we can sort out your spring and shock package.
But again, you usually start with a rear grip kit first.
Yeah, rear grip kit first. Absolutely, that's the worst part of a Mustang, because Mustang is basically a 1960s pony car with a big lump of an engine in the front, live axle, no weight in the back, which means they go great in a straight line, but hard part's getting the traction down. And when they come from the factory, I don't think I may not touched on this, but when they come from the factory, they have almost no anti-squat in the back. And like I said, anti-squat is the rate at which the car will squat onto the spring before it starts putting weight and traction onto the tires. And they come with almost no anti-squat, which is why it's so easy to spin tires on a stock Mustang. And the reason for that, I say, well, why don't they put more anti-squat in because it works better? Well, there's a really specific reason. I've actually sat in on some of these meetings at Ford. To pass, I talk about engineering sign-off. Everything is engineering sign-off at Ford. And to get engineering sign-off, one of the tests is for the suspension is a high-speed backup. Now, high-speed backup, if you've got anti-squat, then the rear axle is going to bounce because the anti-squat's moving in the wrong direction. And if you do that, it'll fail the test because it'll bounce so much it'll break the transmission. So that's why they dial back the anti-squat in the back so they can actually do a high-speed backup. Well, myself and most of you guys out there aren't really interested in doing high-speed backups. Of course, unless you're running away from bank robbers, but that's a different story. So we're focused on going forward. So that's why we put anti-squat in, so the car will get more squat, get more weight to tires faster, get more traction faster. And then the other thing about anti-squat is it's also anti-lift. Okay, and even though we're controlling the squat on the car in the back, under braking, this is the really cool part. Under braking, that converts to anti-lift, which means under braking, the back of the car doesn't want to do this and come up in the air, which is, anybody that really hit the brakes hard on a Mustang, you can feel the back of the car get light. And that's because, there's no anti-dive in the front, there's no anti-squat in the back. So it just, all that weight shifts to the front and the whole back of the car gets light. Which a lot of people say with stock Mustangs on track, if they try to brake hard, the back kind of wiggles. That's because their tires aren't really on the ground. And there's tales of testing at Ford under really hard braking back in the Fox SN95 days that they've engineered actually have gotten the rear tires off the ground on super hard braking tests. So that tells you just how much the car comes up. So anti-squat, we keep the car down under braking, and the anti-dive I have in the front, the anti-squat in the back. Instead of the car wanting to do this under braking, it kind of does this. It feels like, when you drive, it feels like it sucks itself to the ground rather than popping up. And the other little thing about most people don't know, that no anti-dive in the fronts to keep the front from going down, it actually plays a really big role in turn-in. Because, the anti-dive, like I said, it's keeping the front of the car from diving down and putting more weight in the tires. Well, that also helps when you turn in, you're putting more weight in the tires sooner, so you really crisp turn in. On our front grip kit, I'll tell you a story about this. Is out at Miller Motorsports Park. We had a customer out there that was in the Mustang Challenge, and he went to back then they were World Challenge was accepting the Mustang Challenge cars with a few modifications. And we put my suspension on with a front grip kit. And the first time he went out and drove it, he had to learn how to redrive the car. Because what he was finding, he was turning, and the car would turn so sharp that he was driving inside of the rumble strips. So he had to just adjust and wait later and turn sharper, because the whole idea of my engineering is brake the car late, outbrake everybody else, quick turn in, get the car to rotate and get back on the gas sooner as you get more launch off the corner. And that's kind of a pretty simple theory, but it works pretty darn good.
Okay, ready for the next one?
Ready for the next one.
Okay, sure. This is another spring question. What spring range do the JRZ shocks have before having to revalve them? Let me read that again. What spring range do the JRZ shocks have before having to revalve them?
Okay, what's the spring rate range on the JRZ shocks before they have to be revalved? Well, that depends on which one. Now, the JRZ, the single adjustables, like I run on my cars and most of my customer cars, because they're simple, just one knob to adjust. About seven. I can say I never run them up that high, but you know, I ran 700 springs once, and I noticed that a little bit of fall off. I'd say maybe 700, 750. Now the JRZ Pros, which are actually a little different design, they're a monotube versus a twin tube, and that's got a little more valving to it, so you go up a little bit more. But you know, anything above 650, 700, you really need a motorsport shock because that's what they're designed for. You know, if you want to get up higher than that, I mean, I just had a set of shocks built for David in California, the Motorsport double adjustable, you know, it's 11 series, and now that is a pure racing shock, and it's actually, you know, kind of like the descendant of the shocks that Paul used to win the World Challenge Championship. And when you get at that level, I mean, the JRZ Motorsport shocks are just absolutely brilliant, and you know, the Motorsport shocks was like $8,000 to $10,000 are the bottom. Believe it or not, that's the bottom end of their shock range, and they get some shocks that are $4,500 a piece. And that kind of tells you, you know, what the range of JRZs are. But yeah, if you want to go above 650, I'd strongly recommend you move into either JRZ Pro, which is you know, a gas monotube, or into the motorsports. And there's, you know, we can get you into a base motorsport package. Not quite the 10,000 range, but a little bit less than that.
Okay, this is, are you finished with that one?
Yep.
Okay.
And with the motorsport springs, you can go all the way up to 1,000 pounds. So that's the difference. And the valving is a lot more sophisticated, and it just you know, JRZ Motorsports. I don't know if anybody's ever seen pictures of my son Paul, but most of the pictures you see, he's got two wheels in the air coming across the curb. That's because he could use the curbs to advantage. There's two things about a curb. A curb will either upset the car and screw you up, or if you've got the right shock package, you can actually use the curbs to gain an advantage. And that's what TRZs and Paul did. He'd use those curbs like nobody else. But part of it was shock, and a lot of it was his driving. So, okay.
Okay, this is Tim Allen, just a comment he made.
Tim Allen?
Tim Allen, yeah.
Not that Tim Allen.
No, you just answered his question on the Coney Reds.
Okay, Coney Reds.
This is his just a comment. He said, I fully believe in your philosophy about chassis, suspension, tires, wheels, and brakes. They have always been the main focus when building my 86. Have had it since February 1994. I've learned so much listening to your talks. Love this stuff. Thanks for helping us out and understand our cars better. Stay well.
Well, thank you. I hope you guys heard that. I can't even come close to repeating it.
Yeah, that's okay. You don't have to. I just wanted to read that real quick.
That was a real positive comment. We appreciate that. And, you know,
Okay. So here's another question from Larry Martin.
Larry?
Yeah, have you ever had a problem with torsion rear end spinning you out on hard 90-degree turns, inner wheel spin?
Ever had a problem with torsion spinning out on hard 90-degree turn? No. Never had. The whole purpose of a torsion is that torsions is torque sensing. It's got a bunch of helical gears in the middle, and the torsion will adjust torque to the car tire that has the most traction. So based on that, and then of course I'm going to have to back up and say in my cars with a rear grip kit, we've got so much geometry working forward at the back. I mean, you can make 90-degree turns and just get the power and go, and the torsion will just work effortlessly. So I've never had a problem with that. You know, the whole purpose of the torsion is to put torque to the wheel that has the most grip. And if you're going around a corner, if the car is leaning, the outside tire's got the grip, and that's where the torque is going. So, answer: I haven't. I mean, some people have. I don't know. If you have, let me know. But you know, with, like I say, with my geometry and the torsion, works perfect.
Okay. I'm going to read this question. There's another question I've lost. I have to find it. So Edward Trankner is coming back again, and he said, is there a good tire for street track combinations?
A good tire for street track combination. Okay, I'm going to go back, and I'm going to look at that two ways. There can be a street tire that's good for the track, and then it could be a track tire that's good for the street. I'll start with the track tire that's good for the street. What I run on my cars is called the Pirelli P0 Corsa, and it is a track tire that you can drive on the street. It's got, I think, a tread wear of maybe 60, but it seems they don't seem to wear out that fast. It's got incredible traction, very predictable, very smooth, and never get surprised. And they're also, you can drive them on the street because they've actually got a tread design in them. And if you guys ever watched Formula One and you see the intermediate tires that they run, Pirelli intermediates in between rain and dry, the tread on the P0 Corsa is real similar to that. So that's a track tire that you can drive on the street. You can drive the track. You can't drive in the cold. You know, and track tires that, you know, and high performance tires, you can't drive it below about, well, anything below about 70 degrees, 60 degrees, you're not going to get much bite because it's not going to work. Anything like really cold, colder, not going to work at all. And just a little side note, you know, pure race tires, if under freezing, if you aren't careful, they'll break. They actually will break. So that's why race tires are always kept kind of warm in the winter. Now, going the other way, a street tire that you can run on the track. I think probably the best tire I would recommend for that is the Michelin Pilot. I think it's S4 or 4S. That's a really good tire, and it's a street tire, but it's pretty capable on track. And when getting back to springs and shocks, when you're still running street tires, you don't want to go too high on spring rates. Like the stickier the tire, the more spring you need. And you can still get through with that tire. You still get into the, like 400 or 500 pound spring rate easily. I don't know that I want to run like a 650 on a street tire. That's more for a track tire. So there's two for a track street tire. And I think Michelin also has sport cups. And if you want an absolutely unbelievable track tire that you can ride on the street, is the Pirelli Trofeo R. That is, for all practical purposes, a race tire for the street. It's got a race tire carcass. We adjust pressure on that completely different. It's super sticky. It's the kind of thing you turn, your head's going to hit the window because it's got so much grip. But P0 Corsa, great track tire you can drive on, so you can drive. I set up customer cars that they can drive to the track, drive on track, and drive home with P0 Corsas. And again, the Michelin Pilot, either 4S or S4, is a really good tire. Okay.
Edward also has a question added to that. How about Florida rain?
Florida rain. Okay. Now the Michelin is going to be good in the rain because it's a street tire. But I'll tell you a story about my Pirelli Corsas and Florida rain. We were at Sebring doing it like a track weekend, and I had somebody in the car. I can't remember who it was. I think it was a magazine editor or something. And we had just gone through turn 1, and we're headed turn 2, and the sky's open like it does in Florida. I mean, you know, Florida, it could be nice 1 minute, and next minute it's raining so hard you can't see. Well, this is one of those deluges. It just came pouring down, and you know, I slowed down a little bit. But with the Corsas, because they've actually got tread, and it's a design that's kind of mirrored after the Formula One intermediates, you know, I didn't, you know, go real fast, but I kept a decent speed going around the track. And the guy that was riding with me, he was panicked. He thought we were going to, you know, the tires were going to slide off the track. And, you know, we were able to keep a decent speed. And when we got back, I sit in the car for about 20 minutes until the rain just went down to like a downpour, not a deluge. And first thing he did, he got out and looked at the tires to see what they were, because he couldn't believe that on a track tire that I could still maintain some level of speed in the rain. So there's two answers. You know, the Corsa will, you know, get you. You know, it's not a rain tire, but it will get you by in light rain. And then the Michelin is a street tire, and of course they're going to have good wet traction.
And another tire, thoughts on the Toyo R888R?
Toyo R888R, what was the question?
Just want your thoughts on that tire.
I don't have I don't have basically any first-hand experience with them, but I know that a lot of people use them. It's a DOT type tire with a really good compound. They work pretty well. I think there's another Toyota, not the 888R. There was, I think, another one that at one point people liked better. But I mean, any tire in that range is a great track tire and a great club racing tires because they don't cost a lot. Pirellis are great racing tires, but you're going to be spending $680 to $780 a tire, which is a lot more than the Hoosiers or the Toyos.
Okay, we have one question left, but
More notes. I got these cue cards always coming at me. To join the Speech Therapy Society Facebook group, like I said before, it's getting bigger and better. Lots of cars, lots of conversation, lots of like-minded people. Oh, Carrie's left-handed, so I have a hard time reading her writing sometimes. But she's saying the Cars and Coffee, it's replayed in Facebook and it's in the Speech Society group as well. So all the previous ones. There's Kenny Brown TV. If you Google YouTube Kenny Brown TV, they're all lined up on there. So that's a really access if you don't have Facebook and like that. So you can get to the previous Saturday shows episodes. I don't know what do we call these. What do you guys think? Is it a show or is it an episode or is it just fun? Or informative, education class?
okay, Bob Jones, this is the last question.
Last question from Bob Jones.
Okay, sure.
And see, here we are at an hour again. And it always ends up at an hour.
Okay, Bob Jones actually owns the Kenny Brown JMS Mustang. And he's...
JMS?
Yeah, the JMS Mustang that you built?
JPS?
JPS, sorry.
Bob Jones, the JPS Mustang. If you guys haven't ever seen that car, it is beautiful. It's gorgeous. It was mirrored after, back then, Robert Lapalanian, who we knew was racing the JPS, and that stands for John Player Special. That's the UK company. Had a John Player Special Trans Am car. It was black with the gold JPS lettering on it. It was gorgeous. We actually built one Mustang that was a JPS car for a dealership in Kansas City, I believe. And if you haven't seen that, it's really cool. It's a really pretty car. Robert gave me a bottle of JPS Scotch, which is not available in this country. He bootlegged it in. So in my Scotch collection, I've got a bottle of JPS Scotch, John Player Special. And think back to the Lotuses, Formula One Lotuses, like back in the Mario Andretti days, the black ones with the JPS on them. That's John Player Special. And as gorgeous as the Formula One cars look, the Trans Am car looked, and so did the Mustang I built. And he have a question, or we're just talking about his car?
No, he has a question. Bob, if you're listening, why don't you post your car in the Speed Therapy Society group, and if you can post it on the Facebook page, I'm not sure if you'll be able to do that, but why don't you post it so people know what Kenny's talking about?
Yeah, if you could post, that's I think one of the prettiest cars I built. I say, it mirrors the Formula One JPS black and gold cars and the Robert Lapalanian's Trans Am car.
And actually, Bob's car was, not sure if it's still there, but it's in the Mustang Museum. It was on display there, I think, next to the Trans Am car.
I think Carrie said she thought it was on display in the Mustang Museum next to the Trans Am car, which that's got to be extremely cool. If I owned that, I'd be like, ooh, yeah, it's my car.
So anyway, Bob Jones, so if you have the ability to just bump steer, do you prefer dead straight ahead on bump, which probably isn't possible on these cars anyway, or maybe slightly toe out for some stability?
Okay, actually there's kind of like two questions in one. He asked if get the bump for dead straight or toe out for stability. Bump steer is bump steer, okay? And we want to take bump steer out. And that's what we talked about, getting the control arm and the tie rod in as parallel as possible. Toe out, good question. The alignment specs that I tell everybody for all our cars, on caster, you want to put as much caster into the car as you can, maximum positive caster. That does a lot of things, good things for a car. First of all, it makes it for incredible high-speed stability. Secondly, it helps turn in. And then but for alignment, we maximum caster, negative camber on the Fox cars, SN95 around a degree negative camber. S197s can be a degree to a degree and a half negative camber, and then toe. This is important. On the front of the car, we always run a little bit of toe out. A 1/16 of an inch toe out, which on an alignment machine is like negative 0.25 to negative 0.3. And the reason for toe out is it does give high speed stability, but also really quickens up turn-in. You know, and everybody knows that nothing feels better. You turn the car and it actually turns. So we run a little toe out in the front. Now on the IRS cars, at the back it's just the opposite. You know, we'll run about 1.2 degrees negative on the IRS 99 to 04 Cobras, and toe in at the back. You run a 1/16 toe in, so toe out at the front, toe in at the back.
Okay, we have a couple other just questions that were related to what you're saying, so I'm just going to cover those real quick.
You know, we're over my hour.
I know.
Couple of related questions.
You get overtime. Where is it?
Hey, no charge for overtime.
Okay, it's regarding the tires.
Tires?
Uh-huh. Okay, so Marcus Martin, and I think Brad may have answered this. By the way, Brad Grissom has done a lot of work for Pirelli, so whatever he lists on Pirelli is accurate.
Yeah.
Marcus Martin, what is a good weight for a track day car wheel? 18 by 10. I have a 22-pound Steeds ultralight now that is affordable. I think this is supposed to be Steeda ultralight that is affordable. Is that an okay weight? Anything you could recommend?
Yeah, I mean that's an okay weight. No, the OE wheels just weigh a ton. They're like in the high 20s, 30s. I think you said 22 for 18 by
10.
18 by 10. Yes, that's not a bad weight, 22 pounds. Now our forged lines are going to be lighter than that. They're obviously they're a forged wheel. They're a high-end wheel. Most of the race teams in sports car racing use them. I use them on most of my cars. They're going to be maybe in that 18, 19 pound range. We've also got a wheel for S197s that we use that's pretty reasonably priced. It's also in that 20 pound range. It's a really nice, good looking wheel, and we get the 1910, 1911 for the back. So you know that's not bad. I mean, you're okay with that. And something just on wheels. You know, wheels are one of the easiest way to lose weight. People are always looking, how do I take weight off the car? Wheels are one of the best ways to lose weight. You go from like a 30-pound wheel to a 22-pound wheel. I mean, you just lost 8 pounds per corner. You add that up. Plus, it's unsprung mass. And it's something if you go from like a stock OE wheel to a light wheel, the 22 or the forged lines, first thing you notice is the whole car feels lighter. I mean, the steering's lighter. That's because you're not rotating as much mass, and everything reacts quicker, and you can just feel it in the steering. It's just so much easier and so much lighter. Okay.
Okay, I'm just going to read some of Brad's comments in case people haven't seen them because the thread's going a little bit fast.
Okay, some of Brad's comments in case people haven't read them. Brad worked for us a long time ago, and he has a long experience with Pirelli. He's one that got us involved with Pirelli 15 years ago, maybe, and we've had a good relationship with Pirelli ever since.
Brad's a stand-up guy. Okay, here we go. He said the Pirelli Trofeo Rs and the Corsa are both great tires for a wet track. FYI, they use the Trofeo Rs as a race reins in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo and Ferrari Challenge series.
There's a good piece of information. The Trofeo R they use as a rein for the Ferrari Challenge and Super Trofeo, which would be the Lamborghinis. Yeah, and so yeah, I mean it's the thing about the Corsa is a carcass, basically like a DOT carcass, and which is we talked about before. You use your parameter and try to get your pressure, your temperatures across, and adjust your pressure. And by the end of the day, you're going to have 4 different temperatures because each tire doing a different job. The Trofeo Rs are built on a race car carcass, which means you work to an absolute pressure. Like all 4 tires need to have the exact same pressure, which is typically between 32 to 34 in that range.
Okay, and then 2 comments on the Toyo 888Rs. Calvin says they don't work well in the rain, and then there's another comment about that.
Calvin said the Toyo's 888Rs don't work well in the rain.
And also Steve Calistini, he agrees that the Toyos is not all that good in the rain. And our compound tire works awesome on my 2013 Boss LS as a summer tire on and off track. But low temperatures under 40 degrees will destroy the tire. I run Firestone Firehawk Indy 500s on the wet track in my Boss and works really well. I run both on OZ 19-inch wheels.
Okay, I hope you heard all that because I'm not even going to try to repeat it.
You don't have to.
So,
And then
that's I mean, this is really good. I mean, you guys sharing your experiences. I mean, that's only going to help other people in the group.
And then Brad's, remember they ran the Pirelli tires for a season in World Challenge and the race cars revolted. The racers revolted. Oh, I think it's talking about the Toyo tire, never mind. Remember they ran that tire for a season in World Challenge and the racers
yeah,
revolted.
that's right. I forgot that. In the beginning, the World Challenge ran the Toyos as a spec tire, and the racers he said they revolted. That's kind of being kind. And after that, they went to Pirelli slicks, which is you're gonna have a race series of the race cars. You need a race tire, and Pirelli slicks are a darn good choice. And
then this is another interesting comment from Brad. With Kenny's suspension on our car, and because the suspension geometry is so good, we ran 300 minutes on a single set of Pirelli Porsche spec slicks at Sebring. Ken's cars do not use up tires, and the wear is excellent with the right alignment.
Yeah, that's kind of a good point. He said that with all my stuff that they got how many hours? 300 hours on a set of Pirelli slicks.
300 minutes.
300 minutes. So, which most Pirelli slicks are designed for 40 minutes. For the sprint tires, or 40 minutes, 50 at the most. That's the range that they're the most effective. So 300 minutes is pretty good. And he said because of this set, you've got the right geometry, you've got the right shocks, you got the right spring, you've got a good tire wear, and that's something I haven't really mentioned on, but the right shocks improve tire wear. Like the JRZs don't use tires. I mean, they use tires obviously, but the JRZs just don't use tires very much because the valving that's in there, they just treat tires really well. And for the RS1s, the single adjustable track, and for the race tires, they're even better. So
okay, and just one little light bit of humor. Bob Jones does not own the JPS car. Another guy does with a similar name, but
okay. Bob Jones doesn't own the JPS car. Somebody else with a similar name does. So apologies to Bob Jones. Although if you saw the car, you'd wish you owned it. So okay, is that it? That's it for this week. I'm going to try to look at some spring options for street people next week that that don't have the wherewithal or the budget to do like a full coilover package. I'll see if I can't come up with some options that kind of get you where you want to be. So until next week, stay safe, keep the shiny side up. If you drive around in your car, you are quarantined. You realize that. So just remember that. So we'll see you next week.